Thank you. We right on live stream? All right. Well, good afternoon, councillors. Good afternoon to members of the gallery. Good afternoon to our staff and those viewing it on live stream. We have a special meeting today to consider one matter, and that is Ocean Park Avenue. So without any further ado, we'll dispense with the normal agenda contents, but we will do what we normally do, councillors, and acknowledge the Drummle people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. We'll jump straight into the agenda, ladies and gentlemen. So, Michael, would you mind presenting your report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I've got a small presentation today regarding this matter. It's about 10 or 11 slides. I'll run through the information and then I'm happy to take questions through the chair. As we know, Ocean Park Avenue, the issues are that residents in the street are concerned about traffic speed, volume and noise, and the high number of trucks and overall safety. Council officers have completed 2 rounds of traffic data assessments and in November 2022 and June 2023, and then that information has been put into this presentation today as part of the facts of the traffic volume, speed and the percentage trucks and heavy vehicles. In late last year, council conducted a survey of residents in Ocean Park Avenue. There were 64 dwellings in the street. There were 59 responses to the survey, so there was a very strong response rate. Asked a range of questions. One of the questions was around what type of traffic calming could be considered by council. The highest ranking response was to a road closure, and then 49 responses supported a trial road closure, which is where we're at now. So the objective of the work that we've been doing is to try and improve safety and reduce road noise by reducing the vehicle speeds, the volume, and by eliminating non-local traffic, including trucks. So the question for officers and for the council to consider is there on the screen: do we continue a trial, and do we look for alternative traffic management approaches? Next slide, please. So I just wanted to quickly bring to people's attention that local area traffic management is it's a well-studied part of traffic engineering, and there's an Ausroads guide to local area traffic management that all jurisdictions across Australia follow. So local area traffic management is concerned with the planning and management of the usage of road space within a local traffic area, often to modify streets which were originally designed in ways that are now no longer considered appropriate to the needs of residents and users of the local area. LATMs can be seen as a tool for traffic calming at a local level. It involves the use of physical devices, streetscaping treatments and other measures, including regulations and other non-physical measures, to influence vehicle operation in order to create safer and more pleasant streets. So as we've worked through this, I've spoken to many residents and to council about my approach regarding the 3 E's, which are education, enforcement and engineering. Within this manual, it talks about those approaches. The education that we've trialled on this road is to have our variable message boards installed on the road edge, which has a radar in it and measures the speed of the vehicles travelling along the road. And then you'll either receive a smiley face if you're travelling at the speed limit, or a slow down message. So that's part of the education piece that we do from time to time, and we have a couple of trailers that we deploy to different parts of the network as residents raise concerns. We also speak to our police regarding enforcement. The data that we gather from our traffic counters, if we see issues or spikes or say particular behaviour on a Friday or Saturday night, then we'll notify the police about those issues, and then our local officers can go out and do some targeted enforcement. And we thank the police for doing that, and they're also busy doing many other things, so it's not always probably the targeted at the right time, and we don't always catch the people in the wrong, so it can be a little bit hit and miss. And then we work through the engineering solutions, which are within this presentation, but I might just ask for the next slide, please. So just to talk about the road hierarchy in this area. Road hierarchies are set through our planning scheme, and they're founded in traffic engineering theory, which is common throughout Australia. We have local places, local streets, and then minor collectors in our neighbourhoods. Ocean Park Avenue is considered a minor collector in our road hierarchy. As you can see there, it has a daily traffic volume of environmental capacity of up to 3,000 vehicles per day, and it's a 50 kilometre per hour zone. For context, Barmarie Road is a major collector. Tabone and McBean Streets are minor collectors. Old Rockhampton Road and Tamby Road are subarterial. And that goes without saying when you see the cross-section of the pavement and the lanes and the intersection configurations as you move through each of the hierarchy. It gives visual cues, but also provides the necessary capacity for our road network. Next slide, thanks. So key stats that we've synthesised down from our two traffic counts in November 22 and June 23 are on the screen here. The average speed measured is 51 kilometres per hour. The 85th percentile speed, which is a technical term that we use in traffic engineering, is slightly higher at 56 kilometres per hour. So that means that 85% of the road users travel at that speed or less. In simple terms, if the 85th percentile speed approaches about 10 kilometres above the posted speed, we then acknowledge there could be a speeding issue. We've also measured the average volume and the maximum volume for the trial for the data collection periods. You can see a range there because there's different days of the week and so on through the year. So the maximum volume is just 2,500 vehicles, which is below the environmental capacity of the road, but it is approaching where we need to consider doing some traffic management. And the heavy vehicles that have been recorded using that road is 12% on any given day, which is around 200 truck movements per day in that local collector street. If I just talk quickly about the principles of local area traffic management, and this is from the manual as well. So the objective is to lower the speeds along the entire length of road through horizontal or vertical deflections. And there's a little sketch there showing how a device can slow traffic in a street. So the street length shown there, if somebody turns the corner at 20 kilometres an hour on the graph at the bottom, and then they accelerate, you can see the speeds accelerate up to say 70 kilometres an hour, and then that speed is held along the length of the road until they get to the end, and then they brake and slow down again. If we install this device in the middle of that road on the screen there, then you can see how that influences the average speed. As you approach the device, you slow down, and as you leave the device, you accelerate. So the basic principle of local area traffic management is to try and get the average speed across the road length down to something acceptable. And you do that by placing multiple devices in series at a set distance so that you influence people's ability to reach their top speed in any particular length of the road. Next slide, please. So with anything that we do, there are positive and negatives with respect to devices in the street. I've listed those there as a general input into any decision making. We need to understand, and the community, when we consult, needs to understand the impacts of these things, both to the residents in the street and also to the wider road user. So there is a potential for increased travel time. So obviously if you're driving slower, your travel times increase. There's frustration for frontage owners with potential changes to noise characteristics, signage, street lighting. There's some drivers in our community see them as a challenge and they deliberately abuse the devices. There's excessive acceleration and deceleration noises. It could have an effect on parking supply adjacent to the curb and channel. It could restrict property access if poorly designed. Some people don't like the appearance of the extra signs and concrete in their residential streets. It can transfer traffic from one street to another, which is some of the unintended consequences that have been observed in many locations around Australia. You can increase delays on arterial roads if we want traffic to travel on arterial roads, but those roads are already at capacity, then it just exacerbates the issue. And there's also additional cost burdens on the community with respect to construction and then maintenance costs and the like. So when we look at alternatives for local area traffic management, we break them up into, these are the engineering solutions I mentioned earlier. There's vertical deflections, say raised platforms and road humps. There's horizontal deflections, which could be chicanes or modified T intersections. There's diversions, which we're talking about the road closure trial. And then there's line marking and signage, which we have trialled some additional signage prior to the trial, which was we installed local area traffic signs at each end of Ocean Park Avenue, and they're not regulatory signs. We can't find people who are non-local, but it's more of an awareness tool that we can install quickly at low cost. So within the literature, vertical devices are considered to be the most effective in speed control and crash reduction. Traditionally, they haven't been popular with residents for those reasons on the previous slide around some of the negative effects. But the literature also says that there is more acceptance than might have been assumed once communities understand how they work and if they're designed correctly and the like. The next slide is a bit difficult to read on the screen, but there's basically 2 pages of alternative treatments that can be used within a local traffic area. And as I mentioned, they're divided up into vertical deflections, horizontal deflections, diversions, and then lines and signs. So on this screen, this presentation will form part of the minutes of the meeting today for those who aren't here. But I've broken up the various options, alternatives, into yellow highlighted options that I believe could work in Ocean Park Avenue, and the green ones are the devices which I don't believe would work, even though they do provide the relief required, which is around the reduced speeds and reduced traffic volumes. So I've just put those in there for the members of council and the community to read and understand. The next slide, thank you. So within the standard, it ranks each of the devices in terms of the percentage that the 85th percentile speed can be reduced by if they were implemented. So you can see there that vertical deflections can reduce the speed along a road anywhere from sort of 20 to 45%, which is quite a big drop in 85th percentile speed, and they're quite effective. There's also literature that suggests that chicanes and slow points also provide a similar reduction, so that they're quite popular in some areas if you've got enough road widths to be able to modify curb and channel and create the deflections. Without taking away from the debate later on with the councillors, I've provided information here with respect to vertical deflections as an option, because I believe that they would be easiest to install, less disruptive with respect to changing curb alignments or drainage or street lighting and the like. Council will debate that soon. In the briefing session a couple of hours ago, we spoke about temporary one-lane slow points if council chose not to continue with the full road closure. So I've just put a slide in this presentation which can go out to the community as well. This one-lane slow point on the screen is a permanent fixture with some landscaping and sense of sort of blister islands that one person needs to give way to the other as they drive along. There's some open up to questions from councillors, but there's some commentary around whether we could install some of these as a temporary solution in the interim if something else needs to be considered by the council here today. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to take questions from the councillors on anything relating to Ocean Park Avenue today.
Thank you, Mr. Creedham. Councillors, just as a point of clarification and also for viewers and our gallery, the recommendation initially in the notice of motion was that council considers the matter of road safety on Ocean Park Avenue. Clearly today we're looking to go beyond just considering the road safety on Ocean Park Avenue. So what we're hoping for today, ladies and gentlemen, is some sort of outcome that won't necessarily make everybody happy, but provide some sort of solution that council believes will be optimal anyway. So for the General Manager Infrastructure, are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that through you. Thanks, Mr. Creedham, for all you've done. So we're looking at the average amount of vehicles being approximately 2,170 vehicles through this road a day, including approximately 200 heavy vehicles. So I completely understand that the people that live along this particular area where these vehicles are travelling are very highly inconvenienced due to noise, pollution from the cars themselves, etc. But looking at that, if we were to reopen this road to, as soon as possible, how would we implement that temporary narrowing of the entrance as we see here? Because obviously we're not going to be putting in permanent structures.
Thank you for the question, councillor. It is very difficult to implement something as for example, speed platforms or chicanes as a temporary trial. What I suggest that we might be able to do is something similar to what we've done with the Lego blocks, I call it, on the road now. We can look to try and set some of them up as a one-way slow point using narrowing and set it up almost like a roadworks project. We couldn't do it permanently because the traffic barriers are used in temporary situations. So if we had to dig up the road for a water leak or something, we would put some barriers in and make it one way and have some traffic control. We can use the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, Section 2, Works on Road, to allow us to install some one-way slow barriers with the traffic barriers. My suggestion would be that we probably look to reduce the speed limit temporarily through there to 40 as if it was a roadworks project, and we'd need to put it in probably 2 or 3 locations so that people, as we showed on the screen there, we wouldn't just have someone slow down once through a device and then speed up again. They would need to have that consistency of speed.
Thank you, Mr. Creedman. I just have another question very briefly in relation to any type of, say, speed hump, as we call it, which are the vertical traffic calming devices. In our briefing not long ago, our workshop in relation to this, we talked about approximately 9 of them along the road. I personally think that we can actually reduce that number. You talked about 80 to 120 metres in between each one. Is it possible to still have those calming vertical devices on a permanent basis, but also reducing the number along that street? Because I completely understand everyone is not in my area, not in my backyard. I don't want that in my backyard, and I completely get that. But in relation to us reopening the road, we need to do something for the residents, because I understand we also discussed that this is actually a deterrent for large vehicles to enter a street with these type of traffic calming, devices on the road. So how many would the minimum be along this area? And can you explain what would be required for lighting and also the cost? So it's kind of a 3-pronged question.
Thank you, Councillor. So as the literature suggests, 80 to 120 metre separation is ideal for to slow the traffic along the length of the road. I did a quick review and put some dots on a plan that suggested maybe 80 to 90 metre spacings, and that was based around the fact that the current street lighting is about 45 metres apart. So if you go to every second pole, you're sort of in that 80 to 90 metre range, which is ideal. The trick around local area traffic management in a existing street is the trying to fit something in that balances the effectiveness of the devices, as well as utilising the existing street lighting as much as possible, versus making sure that we don't block existing driveways, and we then try and limit as best we can any parking restrictions and so on. So it's, when I had a very quick look, this if council chooses to go down that path, then it would require a detailed engineering design and street lighting design. But just at a very cursory level, every sort of second street light, put a road hump in as an example, that requires 9 devices in the street. If we looked at asphalt speed ramps or humps, then my guess would be that we would probably need to spend between $30,000 and $40,000 per device. If we went with a rubber version, which you can buy, which is to the Australian standard, but they're pinned down onto the road, I believe we could get away with half the costs for those. Some of the bigger costs in installing these are the lighting required. So there's an Australian standard 1158, which is street lighting of roads and public areas. This road has been designed and lit to the Australian standard for residential streets, which is B2, and that means that there's a light every 45 metres, and there's a certain type of luminaire that provides a light for general low-level road use, as well as crime prevention, spill lighting through the night. Under the standard, if we put any vertical or horizontal deflection into the road, then we need to basically put spotlights, so to speak, over those devices to increase the lux level over the device, and to reduce the risk of someone driving over them or through them unknowingly.
But just going back to one of those points, what would be the minimum amount of traffic calming speed humps that can be installed? The minimum amount. We're not talking 9. if we can reduce that amount, what would that be?
I would say about 6. So I'm just doing the maths in my head. Sorry. So as you come off the roundabout, the first one could potentially be about 120 metres up the road, and then you could have them every, say, third light pole, which is about 135 metres. Then if you do 3 times 45, so I'd say 6.
Thank you.
Councillor Watson was first. Councillor Eastwood.
Yeah, Michael, I'm through the chair. Michael, you mentioned earlier about this one-way idea on the street. I was just wondering if there was a resolution today to open up the road, how long would it take to set up these one-way things for the temporary area with your Lego blocks, so that we can at least have the road open?
I would say at least a week, and the reason why I say that is because we would have to get a registered traffic engineering company to do up some traffic guidance schemes for us. So anytime we put these type of devices in, we need to follow that manual of uniform traffic control devices, and we need to have plans which are certified by registered companies, and then so we have those on our ROPS, so we can call on someone to do up a plan for us, and then once we get the plan, we need to understand whether we've got the appropriate signs in stock or whether we need to buy some more, and then we need to also hire some Lego blocks. So that would take at least a week.
Okay. The other question was you mentioned 2 or 3 of these, or whatever you call them, the slow points, I think you called them. Can it be back to 2, or do you need 3 to do this? And the other question is, do we need lighting to go with it, like you would if you're doing the speed humps?
So my understanding is that we wouldn't need lighting because we would set it up as if it was a roadworks project. So we would, if we were to dig a hole in the road now because there was a water main leak, we would just put in place this temporary traffic management until the water main was fixed. So we don't light those sort of installations. If this was to continue on for any length of time, then I would probably recommend hiring in some temporary lighting, just to enhance the lighting and reduce the risks of as people drive through there now. Well, they can't because it's closed. If they choose to drive through there, if we have some one-lane slow points, it'd be good to have that as visible as possible.
And if we decide to go with that, how long would it take until they were taken away and the new measures were put in place? Have you got an idea of that? And the other question is, can they be narrowed enough to slow down, to remove the big vehicles?
So I'll answer the second question first. We would need to maintain a minimum 3 metre travel path. So if motor vehicles 1.8 to 2 metres wide, trucks are 2.4 metres wide, so you will still get a truck through. But then it comes back to that convenience, I guess you'd say. Then that's the whole point of local area traffic management, is to allow, with a slower speed, people to drive through there. But if you're rat running and you're inconvenienced, then you go the arterial road where you're supposed to. So I can't guarantee that a one-lane slow point would sufficiently deter trucks, but I would say it would help. And that's the second question. The first question was time frame. So I have had a bit of a review, depending on options. If we were to look to install some devices in the street, we would need to do some engineering design, street lighting design, then we'd have to order materials and install. And then there's a question around whether we consult on a solution or not. So there's 2 scenarios. The end of May would be one very quick, no consultation solution, and then towards middle of July would be a more conservative figure if we consulted with the residents.
Councillor Eastwood.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. My questions are to Mr. Creedman as well. Firstly, how long can we get away with having that temporary measure set up?
If we're doing a roadworks project, it can go on for years.
We don't really want
So
that.
there's no time limit for temporary measures. If you're digging a hole and you're doing work, then it's in place until it's done. This is an unusual application of that temporary traffic management device.
Oh, that's all right.
So I don't know exactly.
It's certainly going to be
if
long
there's
enough to see if it works. That was my
Yeah.
main. And the other question is, how much would it cost to put in a one lane slow point, or two, as you suggested?
So as a temporary measure with the traffic
No,
barriers.
no, actually, the real thing.
The real thing. Probably $20,000 to $30,000 each.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions, Councillor Mather?
Going back to Councillor Watson's questions in relation to the slow points, do we need, and we're looking at temporary measures here for the moment, because we're looking at opening up the road. So we just can't open the road without having something that will resonate with the drivers that you need to slow down. Because while we looked earlier, before, when we're looking at vehicles on roads, they pay registration, they all pay registration, and all small vehicles are entitled to do that. But we'll be looking at 200 vehicles over 12 hours. Trucks, this is heavy vehicles I'm talking now, heavy vehicles, 200 vehicles over 12 hours. I worked that out to a number of, that's 16 vehicles per hour, or one heavy vehicle every 4 minutes. That's a lot, and I can see why the people are concerned about safety. Getting back to Councillor Watson, if we needed to put in these slow points, does that require a consultation with the people whose houses it will front? That's my first question.
Yes. So within, it's best practice to consult with the residents directly affected for the reasons I had up on the screen with some of the negative impacts. And it's not all negative. There's obviously benefits of reducing the speed and the volume and reducing that rat run temptation. But like anything, there's pros and cons, and they need to be balanced. And it is usual when you do a scheme like this to implement, you consult with the directly affected residents.
Thank you. We spoke earlier in the meeting, in the briefing, this would require some stop-give-way consideration. Is that correct? If we're narrowing the road at some point,
Yes. Yeah.
this would require one side or the other to give way, as it's not a two-lane carriageway. So that's not a problem with me, but how do we control that? Because if you get a school day, mums and dads are bringing their kids backwards and forwards, and if you've got a truck in there, who's going to control this? That's something that would need to be identified with how it could be done. And the other one I had, the last one, anything can happen, but it needs to happen with money in this case, because we need to invest in infrastructure that is going to give us the outcome that we require to meet the objective, being safety. Budget. That would need to come to a budget consideration. We don't have that sort of money at this point in time. Or can we do something on a part-time basis in relation to that one you think that we could get done in a week or so as a first step? Because this is not going to be all done at once, I wouldn't think, because of the lack of finance to do it. But there are some things we can do at very little expenditure. Is there something that...
So I'll just answer that with anything temporary that we're doing out on site at the moment all comes under operational budget, so that's maintenance.
But this hasn't been identified as at this point in time, until now anyway.
Yeah, so anything that's permanent, which would involve, say, road humps and asphalt, or concrete curb and infill islands, and it might cost, depending on how many and the final solution, it could be $200,000 to $400,000. That's a capital project. So that requires a council resolution in itself, and budget deliberations and weighing up all of the other priorities and competing projects across our network in different asset classes. So we don't have the money at the moment in our budget. That's not to say council can't find it. So some things might have to be delayed, or the CFO's not here to kick me under the table. We might have to take some money out of our capital.
Given our caretaker period that we're in, we can only spend so much, and I don't particularly like the thought of having to go to cash reserves, but is there a project that we can delay if it's not urgent to be able to accommodate some of these early measures that are not costly? But certainly we would need to put the big ticket items, the capital works, into the budget considerations for adoption later in the month or later in this financial year. So, in other words, is there something we can do that it's not going to cost an arm and a leg, that we can achieve our objective at this point in time?
I think that's probably that
We'd have to explore that perhaps.
we explore that if council chooses to put in some temporary one-lane devices. That's under operational budget. The long-term solution will require capital investment.
Yes, yes. So that we'd have that sort of operational money that would be available at this time.
Yes.
Yes, all right, thank you.
Councillor Watson was first. Councillor Friend.
Sorry.
Through to Mr. Creedman, just so I've got a vision in my head, I'm sort of picturing a one-lane bridge with a giveaway sign on one side, and that's sort of how it works, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, that's just so I've got it in my head.
Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just segueing off what Councillor Mather was saying in relation to capital budgets and operational works. So you said that if we were to undertake any permanent structures along this particular road, then it would take 81 days without consultation and 107 days with consultation. So in understanding that the whole permanency of these speed humps will be placed on this road in 107 days at the end of July with consultation, we could somehow manage to actually undertake, look at what's proposed in the forward works and change it over. It can be done. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's always competing projects, as we know, that we've got a, in general terms, a $50 million capital works program each year. We've got certain projects which are funded from external sources, and we match that funding, and that's sort of, call it locked in for next year. And there's other projects which are discretionary based on our level of service, whether it's a drainage issue or whether it's a road related issue or a footpath issue or a water and sewer issue or a community park issue. That's all the prioritisation and the multi-criteria review, multi-criteria assessment that we do in the review. So $200,000 to $400,000 potentially on a project here. How does that weigh up compared to all the other projects? For that $50 million is the budget, the 10 or 12 budget workshops we do.
Sure. So I was looking at, say, 6 times $40,000, $240,000. Just to confirm with Mr CEO through the Mayor, we are in caretaker mode. So is that something that can be undertaken through resolution at this time?
Mr Mayor, strictly speaking, yes. So the restrictions on councillors at law are for procurement of the greater of $200,000 or 1% of rate revenue, which in our case is about $850,000. So this wouldn't approach that. The council's own policy around caretaker period is that it doesn't unduly bind an incoming council. I guess that's a subjective matter, but I wouldn't have thought that that this qualified for that. So no, I don't think there would be any impediment to proceeding during the caretaker period.
Thank you. Just 2 more questions with your leave, Mr Mayor.
Of course, Councillor.
If I may. Thank you. We have the wonderful people of the estate in the room today. We have many more watching online. So I think it's only fair that I ask these questions. And in saying this, I certainly understand that any trials through council are undertaken and can be undertaken through delegation, and it's not certainly the officers' fault. They are doing their job. But why were only a limited number of people surveyed? Why not the whole estate? And second part of that question, what data could possibly be obtained as the road is closed and there's no traffic through either way? So what type of data can be obtained?
Thanks, councillor, for the question. And I have had these questions from numerous residents, so I appreciate your asking of this. So the reason why we completed the survey of only the residents in Ocean Park Avenue is because they are the residents who are directly affected by the issue. So when I've done these in the past in numerous places around the state, you always ask the directly affected residents to get the base. And through the survey, 100% of respondents, which was almost everybody in the street responded, said 100% yes, we have a speeding issue, 100% yes, we have a traffic volume issue. And then we had a toggle question around the time of day, which that's fine. And then there was a question where I asked the residents to rank what they think the solutions might be, those engineering solutions, from line marking and signage through to chicanes and speed platforms through to road closure. And then from that said, well, would you consider trialling a road closure? Because as we know, that's a big step. A trial it's polarised the community, there's no doubt about it. The benefit of trialling the road closure was, in my mind, that there was nothing permanent displaced through the trial, that we weren't going to break any curb or pin anything to the road. So it could be there, and it's quite cheap, so it could be there or taken away quite quickly. During the trial period, which we set down for 12 weeks, and the reason why that was chosen was because it would take in the start of the school year, so traffic pick up and drop off once school's back. It also was able to allow people to adjust to the change, even though it was temporary, so that they could change their travel habits, and we could then see what the consequences or unintended consequences within the network are. So some residents obviously have already mentioned some of those things about having to find alternate routes to get down to Bunnings and the like, or across town. Those things need to be tested as part of this trial, and then we haven't done any traffic counts yet, so I've spoken to a few residents about the counters that we put down, and we've done that in the street over the last 12 months. So we've got some base data, and then there's still residents who are going into the estate. We would count them at the same spot, so we know what the actual neighbourhood traffic is. But then also we were planning on during the trial, doing some counts of side streets as well, and the old Rocky Road. We've got long-term data on that, so we can see if there's any change or spike, or whether the traffic influences the roundabout down at Yeppoon Central, for example, and what those consequences are of the network. So that was the intent. I made the decision to consult with the residents of Ocean Park Avenue as the directly affected group of residents and key stakeholders. I know that's caused angst with the other residents in Central Park Estate, and I know each of you have probably had representation around that as well, about the consultation process and the procedure. That's my rationale for following the survey only in the residents directly affected.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor. I'm going to make a couple of comments if I can. First, Councillor Bello. I had a question and then a couple of comments. So the question is, Mr. Creedman, given the level of traffic use or utilisation on this road at the moment, it's approaching, I guess, the upper limit for its classification. What would have happened, or what would you envisage happening once it reaches that 3,000 vehicle movements a day, where it sort of trips it into well, it won't be a different categorisation, but it will certainly take it to its upper limit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So once the road reaches an environmental capacity, it still functions as a road, albeit there's a level of service reduction because the road's function is to provide a traffic route for the neighbourhood. It's also there to for us to provide a lifestyle, and once that starts to erode, and I think from anecdotal evidence of people driving in and out of their properties and reversing out onto the road, and others who feel unsafe when they're mowing or just walking the dog on the footpath, on the verge. So they're the things that will erode over time as the road reaches its environmental capacity. There are plenty of examples around in big cities in Australia where roads have exceeded their environmental capacity, and then we all know that it's just congestion and people put up with that sort of thing. In an ideal world, when you do integrated transport and land use planning, you follow all of these procedures and you make sure that you do the best you can to provide the arterial roads that people feel comfortable driving on, so they don't cut through these minor roads. I could imagine that where we are now, that over time, as Livingstone continues to grow and we're a very popular place to settle, the traffic volumes on all of our roads will just increase, and then our level of service in some hotspots will deteriorate.
But am I correct in assuming that once Ocean Park Avenue, for example, reached that 3,000 vehicle movements a day, we will be looking at some sort of local traffic management intervention anyway?
That's right. That would be one of the things. We'd be in the same spot in 2 or 3 years' time as we are now. We'd be grappling with what to do with this traffic issue.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Councillors, I guess I was interested in the data because notwithstanding the number of vehicle movements a day, I think the number of truck movements, 200 I think it was, that just blows my mind. That level of heavy vehicle use on that classification of road, I think they belong out on arterial roads, to be perfectly honest. And I think I understand why the residents of Ocean Park Avenue have brought this matter to our attention, but I also acknowledge the concerns of the people in the back streets, for example, Oxford Road and Sampson Crescent, about jumping pretty much to an extreme measure and closing the road. So I acknowledge all of that, and I think councillors right across the board acknowledge that. I'm hearing there may be an appetite for a one-lane slow point, but I'm going to basically throw it open for debate now, councillors, as to where you would like to see this matter progress. And Councillor Bello, I'm going to go to you.
If I perhaps just conclude maybe the questioning, if I can, Mr. Chair, and much of what you've raised is where I was heading myself, and I am keen now, I guess, to explore a little bit of the history of this estate, not to sort of criticise people for where we are today, but to ensure that we learn from the lessons of the past. And I guess, Mr. Creedman, I'm keen to know how important it is for councils to, when we've got new subdivisions coming online, which we're going to see more and more come, how critically important it is that we put into place at the time of approving these subdivisions these types of potential traffic mitigating measures that ensure that you don't have the problems, whether you get to 3,000 or whatever the number is, and that we don't take on those subdivisions unless we put into place these types of measures, which we now find ourselves potentially debating. Are we going to retrofit a road, or are we going to have a permanent road closure, which ultimately is going to be very disruptive to the pattern of traffic movement. Both parties have been impacted by this, and they've both got good reasons for feeling very upset by the scenario we find ourselves in. So how was it that subdivision ultimately, when Rocky Road roundabout was built and that leg of the roundabout went into Ocean Park Avenue, how important, I guess, was it to review the likely pattern of traffic that we were going to see in there, and ensure that into the future we design those suburbs to not repeat these processes. So it's a big area of policy, I guess, that I think, if anything's positive can come out of this, is that we can ensure the future subdivisions that developers put forward will see these traffic calming measures in place, so that we actually have safer, slower streets that our community really expects and probably deserves. So can you give us some assurance that we've got that ability in place to do that? Or
Thanks for the question. So it's the Institute of Public Works Engineers, Queensland, have a publication called, used to be called Queensland Streets, and it became Complete Streets. So that's sort of like a guiding document that all local governments use to frame their road design policies and principles and embed them into the planning scheme. We also have all of the Ausroads guides, which we were just looking at the local area traffic management guide. So there are a number of standards that practitioners both in council and also in consulting firms who work for developers all use. The intention is to design the road network and transport network, because it includes footpaths and bikeways and the like, so that we have a hierarchy and we understand the importance of each road link, and we ensure safety and capacity and that sort of thing. So we continue to do that. This is an example where I think, as you say, the history, I'd be happy to review some of that, not at all for a witch hunt, but just to see if there's any lessons we can learn. I must say, in general, I think we do have a very robust road network, and we're growing, and there's growing pains, but in general, we're very lucky that we are well planned and we're able to meet the needs of our community now and into the future because of the strong planning that we have had. This may not be the best example, but we can learn from that. I don't know the history around whether there's been some conjecture whether the road was meant to be a through road or not in the past. I haven't delved into that in the last week or so, because that's something that we can look back on and learn from, but trying just to understand the data and the community's views to move forward is what I focused on for this meeting. But as you say, we've got to learn some lessons when we need to. That's something we can do.
I guess if I could, it's important, I guess, from even the portfolio that I have, which is organisational performance. It's critical that we do look through the rear view mirror and say, okay, how do we end up here? How do we ensure we don't moving into the future? And I guess just an observation, because speed is something that's raised constantly with the growing community that we've all seen happen over the last 5 to 10 years, and especially the last few years. There doesn't appear, though, to be a lot of examples in our new subdivisions of traffic calming mitigating measures in place. And I was only down at Zilsey Cove the other day, down near Twate Park there, and I noticed, I took a photo, there's a little central island in the middle of a very quiet little street, and I thought, wow, they put that in place, that'd be 15 years ago, but it doesn't seem to be reflected in a lot of our new estates. And I'm just wondering, I guess, can we get a commitment maybe to review what our streets and suburbs could look like? What is the appetite to see those embedded into our new estates, so that we are moving towards those slower, safer suburbs that communities generally want to see happen? Because that's what we hear constantly over and over: speed, traffic, We're worried about our kids and all that sort of stuff. So that would be positive from an organisational performance perspective if that could occur, Mr. CEO and Michael. Thank you. No more questions.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a point on that. When we go to design our residential streets, we design them with the intention of making sure we don't need to put local area traffic management in, because we've designed the correct curves and intersection spacing, and we're able to push traffic up to the higher order roads naturally through good design. It's I made a quote from the manual, which is local area traffic management is concerned with the planning and management of the usage of the road space within the local traffic area, often to modify streets which were originally designed in ways that are now no longer considered appropriate. So it's basically retrofitting a street that's not performing how it was intended, and that can happen because I don't know, in Brisbane the road was designed for quarter-acre blocks 50 years ago, and now there's 3-storey units on every one of those blocks. So the intention is to get it right the first time, and hopefully not see too much local area traffic management within our new subdivisions, because they should all have the right cul-de-sac makeup and leg length they could talk about, and that 80 to 100 metres before you go to a bend or something in the road to slow people down naturally. Yeah. But I do take on your point that we need to just review what we've got now, and have there any lessons that could be learnt that we can apply into our. We own our current development guidelines. We are we're our own destiny maker. So we, as a council, we reflect on all of the Ausroads guides and the like, and we talk to other practitioners, but we can set our own standards.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mather, your light's on.
Yes, just a very quick one, to follow on from Michael, Mr. Mayor. When he talks about one was a suburban street, and then it turns out you can have a 2 or 3-storey units development. Our planning scheme has a lot to do with what we do, because I can see problems down the track by our planning scheme allowing 2 houses on one block, where the road was only meant for so many houses, so many vehicles. And if we're going to allow that, we're going to double up what's already going to be approved, that to add to that, which means you've got a lot more traffic on that little road. We can't retrofit that, but we have to be very mindful whatever we plan in our planning scheme is going to impact on our roads and our decisions and our money.
Indeed. Thank you, Councillor Mather.
Mr. Mayor, I think we need to get into debate because we're going to be...
I am well aware, Councillor Mather. Thank you. Councillor Swadling.
I just want to make a comment on a couple of those things. You talked about planning and future developments, and as part of my portfolio, that this is pretty well clear and evident in discussions I've had around, particularly new people coming on development and developments coming up, asking those questions in relation to traffic, amount of traffic controls that are in place. And this is certainly something that we're looking at as a development planning, in particular as a portfolio hold for that, is to look at that, those aspects, so we can learn from this sort of these issues that we're having. I can continually see these issues, and not only with that, but also the size and the length of the width of the roads, in particular around those areas. And I use the example as an emergency services member. Trying to get 2 fire trucks up a street is very difficult when they're the way that they've been designed currently. So having that knowledge and fully understand and awareness of those things, I think it's important that we get it right. And we all seem to be saying the same thing, and we learn from that. And it's certainly something that I make one of my firm decisions as I move forward, particularly in the role in the particular portfolio holder, is to ensure that these things are identified, they're mentioned, they're looked at, but also the review of our planning scheme, which is currently in process. So those things are some of the questions that were raised in those areas. So yeah, so just to back that up, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, councillors, I think we need to get on with the debate and where we're going to go with this. Our members viewing it on live stream and members of the gallery during the workshop this morning, there was fairly extensive discussion around this whole topic, as you can well imagine. And a proposed or recommended or a recommendation was put up and drafted, which we might put up on the screen. Now, we acknowledge But this isn't necessarily going to make everybody happy. Some people will be unhappy with this, but that seems to be our lot in life as councillors. But ultimately what we're trying to do is provide a solution that will hopefully keep everybody, or most people, relatively comfortable. So I'll read it out, and it reads as follows: that 1, although not necessarily supported by traffic data collected over the past 12 months, Council recognises the concerns of some residents of Ocean Park Avenue about road safety caused by non-residential traffic rat running, this through route increasing traffic volume and speed and vehicle size on a road not intended for such purposes. 2, accordingly, Council directs that A, a permanent closure of the road is not an acceptable outcome. B, Council prefers other local area traffic management solutions such as vertical deflection, for example speed bumps, and will consult further on the preferred solution once detailed design has been completed. And 3, the outcome of the consultation along with previous options analysis will be presented to as recommendations to Council. And 3, while the latest review and consultation is undertaken, other traffic calming, in brackets temporary 1-lane slow point, will be installed probably along Ocean Park Avenue to enable the trial road closure to be discontinued. So councillors, are we relatively clear on what's on the screen? All right. So to get debate started, I'm happy to move that. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Mather, thank you. All right. I will reserve my right to speak at the end, so I'm going to throw the floor open to those speaking in support of the resolution, the recommendation. Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's a tough one because the survey was sent out to all of the residents along Ocean Park Avenue, and we know that 59 people responded with 100% believing that there should there's issues with traffic and speed, and that 83% of those 59 answered yes to a temporary road closure. I feel for these people, I really do. 2,170 vehicles a day, 200 trucks a day, what they've had to go through is shocking. But putting this road closure in place without then surveying the rest of the community, rest of this community, has been a real issue and a huge inconvenience. I myself have driven both the bottom end and then up to the top end of this community, and found that this is definitely a problem. In saying this, we need to come up with some sort of a solution that is, even though it may be minor for some, a win-win situation for all residents of this estate. I find that traffic calming along this particular road has been in the past known to reduce speed, to discourage traffic that's not local, and to discourage heavy vehicles as well, which is what we're hoping to do. It's either permanently close this road and inconvenience 200 odd people, or open the road and cause more issues for those living along this street. So the only option is to actually place these traffic calming devices in place, and I hope with the minimal amount that you could possibly need. But certainly I do think that the temporary measure of narrowing the road whilst this then reopens is a good measure to start with. But certainly we need to look at both the people who live along the road and those that are hugely inconvenienced by this as well. So I do believe that traffic calming measures will actually discourage other large vehicles from travelling this road in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Friend. Anyone speaking in opposition? Councillor Mather would like to speak to it. Put your microphone on.
In relation to the survey and why only Ocean Park Avenue was surveyed, I believe our manager gave his reasons for doing that at the time, and we didn't know that then, but obviously the consequences showed that it needed further consideration. But the manager did give his reasons for doing that, and it actually abided by a standard that he had at that time. we've got a road closure which has divided a community, and whether that division was caused by half of the community not being surveyed, I don't know. But certainly the impact has been removed from Ocean Park Avenue to the side streets. So we're just moving the problem. So we need to go back and revisit and see where we can start again. And that is to calm the traffic and slow the traffic and remove the heavy vehicles on Ocean Park Avenue. That can be done and it will be done. My concern is it can't be done fast enough for the people who are living in the back streets. We do need a win-win situation and we will have it, but we need money to do a permanent fixture. So in the meantime, we will have temporary measures put in place at very little cost, I take it, Michael, very little cost to be able to accommodate that slowing of the traffic. But it can't go without community awareness. And we've got newspaper that comes out twice a week. But we really need to get that message out through the newspapers that this is a suburban street and we'd like to keep it safe for the people who use it for everyday transfer. So, Mr Mayor, I think without saying too much today, and I do have a petition I'd like to offer in a few moments, there are lots of questions that the residents have asked me to put forward today. I hope some of those questions have been answered by Michael, but and I'm sure there'll be others, but they're all here. They drill quite deeply into what was accepted and why it was accepted. And I think part and parcel of the consultation and the survey in particular, it was because they felt it was interpretation that the people doing the survey, answering to the survey, were told what to put. And that's a very strong feeling that came through from those people who saw it. They were told, this is what you put it, this is what you want. And the first option should have been the last option. But they took it first. And in hindsight, some of them regretted that. But I think I won't go on, Mr Mayor, but there was some suggestion that we should take everything away today. We can't do that immediately today, until we've got some certainty that we've got another alternative in place for perhaps next week. I don't know how much time that can take, Michael. But if we open up today, we need to be able to give those people on Ocean Park Avenue some comfort that we're doing something in its place that of low cost that can actually assist us and assist everybody. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. I'm just going to open the floor before I conclude the debate. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Eastwood.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I guess, first of all, and I know how some of you are going to be from Ocean Park Estate and you're probably not liking what you're hearing. And we certainly feel for you. The design of this road was to go all the way through, and as council we need to make sure that we look after all our residents. I was just thinking about this, and as a young fella I spent a fair bit of time on a property, and you don't use an elephant gun to shoot a rabbit, and I kind of think that that's what we've done here by shutting the road. We started off using a slug gun, where we put up a couple of signs and didn't do enough. What we should have used is a 22. That's what you shoot a rabbit with. Okay, so that's what you shoot a rabbit with. And if we go and shoot it with a shotgun, what happens is you'll just end up with bits and pieces everywhere and a real mess. By giving us time, by being able to bring up this slow point, one lane solution, well, it's not a solution, it's a temporary thing. What we're going to do is we're going to allow our officers to come up with the best solution that they can. And they are the experts. We're not. So we're going to leave it to them to make the right decision, to come up with, now whether it stays, if the one lane thing works, great. If we need to do something else, fantastic. But we just need to leave it in their hands to make sure that they come up with a solution that works. So I am sorry to the Ocean Park residents, but I'm sure that we can find a solution that's going to benefit everyone, not everyone, but closing the road, I just don't think is the right way to go. So,
Can I say something here, please? No, you can't, sorry.
thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else? Anyone else from council wanting to make a comment before we wrap up?
Yeah.
Councillor Bello?
Yeah, no, I guess I feel a responsibility to be accountable for the decisions that I make and have to own those decisions. I heard it said that this will be a win-win in the end if this motion is supported, which I will be supporting this motion, but in many ways it's not a win-win, but it's actually the responsible thing to do. It may not feel like a win to the Ocean Park residents who for probably 2 years have suffered 5 years. There you go, a long, long time they've suffered incredible traffic numbers, significant speeding, and of course they're concerned about the safety of their families and children and what have you. Unfortunately, the solution that has been put forward, I guess similar to what Councillor East was saying, and perhaps what's reflected here, is that the solution is not a road closure. And I regret that it's got to this point, after 5 years, that the community is now divided, sadly. The neighbourhoods are divided. And our job is actually to bring neighbourhoods together, not to divide them. I don't believe there was any intent to do that, but we learn from our mistakes. And the job now is actually to move forward to try and find not a win-win, but what is the responsible solution to allow traffic flow through our growing community, to allow traffic flow through legitimate pathways to be able to navigate around our township, but do it in a way that the road reflects design elements which should have been put in place initially, but sadly they weren't. But now we have to correct that wrong, because shutting down streets, there would be 100 people out there, which we've all received phone calls from, that have said, can you shut my street? Because I've got similar problems as well. And we know that that is not a feasible option. So we have to be able to find solutions that allow for the connectivity to flow, but it means that the traffic has to slow down in order to go through there. And it's reaching that tipping point where some traffic will say, oh, I'm not going down Ocean Park Avenue again, I've got to go through that little chicane or over that bump or whatever it may be, I'm going to go down Rocky Road. That's the tipping point you're trying to find. And that's what we need to find in all of our streets at our suburbs to accommodate the growth that is coming. I know that the Barmarie Road residents have been saying for years, our road is like a drag strip. We need you to put something in place to reduce that traffic. The Two Sisters in front of Cooey Bay there is like an absolute dangerous section of road. Closing those is not an option, but investing into our suburban networks is what the responsible thing to do. And that's what our community expects of councils to make those decisions. In terms of the budget, I'm not concerned about what it costs to fix this thing to get it right. We've got $99.6 million in our bank account. Ocean Park Avenue deserves the highest grade of traffic mitigating measures in place to best solve the solution. And if that costs $300,000 or $800,000, whatever it costs, we're not going to do a half job, right? That's what I believe is what underpins the decision I'm making. And so on that note, I shall leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else before we wrap up? All right, just very quickly, I'll draw your attention to the resolution, ladies and gentlemen, and the first part is an acknowledgement by council of the issue. We acknowledge the traffic movement through there that was determined by our traffic count, and as I said to the congregation earlier, the number of truck movements through there just it blows my mind. And they need to go out onto an arterial road. So essentially what this particular resolution does, it puts in place a consultation process going forward. Now I acknowledge that may not be something that everybody wants to be engaged with, In the meantime, we are putting in a one slow lane point, two slow lane points to calm. Yeah, sorry. Was it three? Was it, Michael? 2 or 3?
2 to 3. I think it'd be best to put 3 in if we
3.
find
Okay,
that
we're putting in
appropriate.
temporary one-lane slow points along the road to essentially keep the traffic that's going through there at a reasonable speed, 40 kilometres an hour, at a safe speed. We will make it 40, Michael, you said before, did you not? Yes. So that measure is determined, it's determined to make, or attempt to make things safer for the residents along Ocean Park Avenue, because they are the ones experiencing this safety issue. Acknowledging, of course, that the people in the back streets, Oxford Road and those other back streets, have been affected by the road closure. So, ladies and gentlemen, this may not be a perfect solution, as I think a number of my colleagues have alluded to, but it is an opportunity for us to try and correct the problem that we've created, and I am not throwing the General Manager of Infrastructure under the bus. For those of you that have had a go at him over the last couple of weeks, have a go, try doing his job. It's a tough one. And so he made the best decision he could with the information he had at the time. And so ultimately my support is still with him, but I also am more than happy to support this recommendation, because I believe it provides a good solution temporarily until we come up with a more permanent one. On that note, councillors, we'll close debate. As a mover and myself, seconded Councillor Mather. All in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. And as that is the only item on our agenda today, thank you, Councillor Mather. Hand that to the CEO.
May I read just it's a 260 signature petition from the people in that area. Sorry.
You put it on speak on the microphone.
260 signature petition that the local residents of that area, I don't know if they're all restricted to the back streets rather than Ocean Park Avenue. I haven't gone through to see, and I don't need to. But these have all been collected since Saturday's meeting in Beeman Park. So it's a big effort by a lot of people to be able to get this to us, just to remind us of our job. And I'll just very quickly, and I'm conscious of time, we've got another appointment. This petition aims to express our opposition to the closure of Ocean Park Avenue, Yeppoon, while acknowledging the need to address speed-related issues. Completely shutting down the road to all users is an extreme measure that requires a careful examination of alternative solutions. We oppose Council's approach and insist on transparency before any changes or trials are approved and implemented. I'd like to present this on behalf of the people, Mr Mayor, please.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. We'll receive that.
Access over safety. Good on you. Well done, councillors. Well done.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As that's our only item of business, we'll close. Yep, thank you. All right, have a good afternoon, everyone.
you.